So in Parshas VaEira, we have a tricky pasuk to work on. I'm going to try to make this clear and see where it applies, gets to it in the best way possible. Like I've said before, the Sfas Emes is a difficult book because it wasn't a book he wrote as a book per se. I mean, he did want it to go out as a book, but it wasn't like a rabbi who prepares his drasha and then reads it and then publishes it. He would speak on Shabbos, and then afterwards he'd say, "Oh, what did I say? Let me write it down." And he wrote it down fairly telegraphically. Right? This edition I have it fills in the footnotes a lot of the sources and such, but it's there. So the pasuk in this week's parsha, Perek Vav pasuk Zayin, says, "V'yedatem, when I take you out of Mitzrayim, you will know ki ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God, hamotzi eschem mitachas sivos Mitzrayim, who takes you out from the burdens, the suffering of Mitzrayim." Now, hamotzi is an interesting lashon. We're familiar with it, right, with our bracha on bread. And it isn't shehotzi, who took them out. It's an ongoing present tense. You will know that I am always taking you out of Mitzrayim. He says, V'zetam kol hagolus, he says, this is in fact the reason behind the goal of this entire golus, k'dei sheyeda ha'odom shemitzido muchan lios b'golus. That if it were left up to you, so to speak, you would be in golus even now. Now this echoes something that we say in the Seder, right? That line, Ilu lo yetzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu zavasenu Mitzrayim, if Hashem didn't take us out of Mitzrayim, haray anu banenu v'nei banenu mishubadim v'yinu leparo b'Mitzrayim. We would all be enslaved still to Paro and Mitzrayim. There's always somebody at the table says, wait a second, like regimes change or something like this, and slavery is illegal now according to the UN, and what does all that mean? So we're going to try to address that here. Okay, he says like this. First of all, he goes to say that this is actually not just a statement, you will know, but this is a havtacha, this is a promise. This will be part of who you are. And again, reflecting this strange obsession the Jewish people have with talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim all the time. We're commanded to remember it every day, morning and night, special holidays for it, everything. Why do we have to remember? What do we have to remember? So he says like this, and he finishes, in fact, in this piece, he says, you have to know that Lulei Rachamov Hayinu b'Mitzrayim. If Hashem didn't have mercy on us, we would be in Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim was a bottom point in all things. It was a bottom point physically. It was a bottom point spiritually. The Medrash has an interesting image for the Jews in Mitzrayim. Hashem is described as one who took goy mi kerev goy, one nation from inside another one. So the Medrash says, like a person who gets an embryo out of an animal. Right? I know a guy who was a shepherd for a few years outside in Yitzhar. That's part of their big work, is getting the baby sheep out of the sheep. That image means that the Jew in Mitzrayim was totally enveloped in Mitzrayim. Everything that the Jew received came through Mitzrayim. They almost had lost their entire identity. The Rambam describes this, right, in the beginning of Hilchos Avodah Zarah. He talks about Am Yisrael in Mitzrayim being a plant, like a plant that nearly died in Mitzrayim. And then we came out as we did. It's hard to figure out why we were in Mitzrayim. Okay, according to most Mefarshim, you don't see it being like Golus Bavel, right, going into the Babylonian exile, or Rome as something punitive. Here, Avram Avinu was told from the get-go, right? Welcome, you're going to find the chosen people. By the way, right, they're going to go into this strange land and be enslaved for 400 years, right? When I said 210 years of actual slavery, like, why? What is there? Now, it seems that he's hinting to the aspect, right, that, listen, your beginning state was Mitzrayim. Who took you out of Mitzrayim? Hashem. That wasn't a one-timer. That's constant. If I wasn't keeping you out of Mitzrayim constantly, you would be in Mitzrayim, physically and spiritually. The question is why? Right? Spiritually, it says a shocking thing. He says, and this is why it's important for a person's midas. Tzarich adam leida af beis ratzon. You have to know, even at a time where things are going good for you, sheish lo ktsas dveikus. You're really feeling your Yiddishkeit a bit. You're excited about it. You're doing it. He says, im kol zeh, don't forget, lo yushkach mimenu shemuchan mitzad atzmo lekol chet v'avan. If Hashem wasn't helping you, you would be able to do the worst averas in the world. Very important advice if anybody who's getting uppity and feeling holy about themselves. For whatever reason, Hashem's letting you get there. But if He wanted to spin it that way, you would do the worst things possible tomorrow. Don't think that you're, like that. It's a fascinating thing. Rak be'ezer Hashem yizbarach. So let's take a look at where we get to from this. I think it helped me deal a bit with an approach to dealing with pain, suffering, things that you want and don't have that always annoyed me. And it could be that the roots of it in the Jewish character, it seems to be a very Jewish approach to things. It's what's called could be worse. Could be worse, right? This kind of thing. I don't like supper. You want to be in Africa, starving child with that? Could be worse. Oh, I've got this pain in my leg. You could have pain in two legs, right? You might not even have a leg, right? You're complaining. Could be worse, could be worse, could be worse. And that really doesn't do it for people, I think, very often. Okay, you're right, it could be worse, but this is bad. Why should it be bad? Right? Why should it, okay, not worse, but why not better? And this is something that pains people in many ways. And in certain ways, he seems to see this, right? Whatever your aspirations are, the Jewish status quo, the Jewish ground zero is Mitzrayim. If you're not in Mitzrayim, that's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took you out of Mitzrayim. Okay, so let's try to see what he's saying with this. A flip side of this could be worse thing is, in some ways, a very beautiful. It's become a movement now. It started, but I think also it hurts people sometimes when it's approached in the wrong time, in the wrong way. That's this constant idea of thank you, Hashem. Okay, and this is something you find in Sfarim, that if a person thanks Hashem for the good that they have, suddenly they'll realize and they'll become elevated, and that can be their way out of the deepest, darkest places, right? Instead of focusing on what you don't have, thank Hashem for what you have. But again, that's hard for a person to get into. You see your friend, he looks depressed. What's wrong? I got fired. Okay, but you have clothes, don't you? Yeah, thank Hashem for your clothes. That would be really bad if you didn't have clothes right now. It's winter, right? Thank Hashem. Okay, thank you Hashem for clothes. No, you didn't say it like you meant it. You have to sing it. Thank you Hashem. It's like, and the person wants to kick the guy. Why? Right? So I think what he's telling us is the following. Why did we come out of Mitzrayim? Why are we not in Mitzrayim now? Va'ekach eschem, Hashem said, I'm going to take you. V'lakachti eschem li la'am. You're going to be my nation. You have something to do. You have a mission to do. That's why you're coming out of Mitzrayim. In fact, the flip side of this is somewhat frightening. Rav Chaim Friedlander brings this down mostly from the Maharal, is on the other side, right? We know that Pesach and Tisha B'Av are two sides of a coin. That's why we have the beitzah, the egg on the Seder plate. Even though it could really, according to halacha, be any cooked item, we put the egg because it in fact reminds us of something that happens in the Jewish calendar as we have it set now. The night of the Seder is always going to be the night of Tisha B'Av. The night of the week, Tuesday night Seder, Tuesday night Tisha B'Av. And in the Kinnis, we talk about the comparison, B'tzeisi mi Mitzrayim, when I left Egypt, B'tzeisi mi Yerushalayim, when I left Yerushalayim going into exile. Why are those flip sides? He says, because the Jewish people don't really have an existence outside of their mission. We are our mission. The Jewish people became who they were by receiving the Torah. In the desert, which is really a place of non-existence. The big desert in America called Death Valley. Guess why? Right? It's not someplace you live. Okay, we had that. There's a land of Eretz Yisrael, which is our land. When we receive our identity, then that's the place in which we have our, so to speak, consulate in this world. But when Am Yisrael stop following their mission, fulfilling it, they don't just shift back into being a regular nation. Say, okay, God, sorry, like, we're really not cut out for this, so we're just going to be regular folks. No, throughout history, they're constantly persecuted, pursued, in a way that boggles the mind. He says that's because if you don't have your mission, you don't have a regular existence in this world. And this is what he's saying, I think. If you're not in Mitzrayim now, that's because if it weren't for the mission, there's no reason to take you out. Okay? Not physically, not spiritually. You're equipped for that mission. We've referred to in other times the concept that Jews don't missionize. Right? We don't missionize. If someone wants to join, right, they can learn and join. We don't missionize because it's not a self-fulfillment club. Right? Sometimes people market Judaism as the newest trend in self-actualization and spirituality. Right? Judaism is the best. You have chicken soup, you sing curry bone, right? You get so high on this, and then the question is, okay, well, why aren't you convincing everyone to do it? It's not a self-actualization program, it's a mission, right? A very dangerous mission. And everything that Jews have, spiritually, historically, are equipment for that mission. So now let's get back to the idea of could be worse. Could be worse means that what you have is what you need for your mission within the mission. All of us have limitations. All of us would like to tell God, I could really do a lot more if you just help me out. Right? There are these massive lotteries now in America. I forget, somebody won now like over $1 billion. And when you read about the biography of the person who won, you'll see very beautiful. He was a janitor in a school, and he always wanted to have a horse racing farm. So now he's going to buy a massive horse racing farm in Kentucky and breed thoroughbreds. Beautiful. So you look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, really? Really? You know what I would have done with that? You know what I've done? All the chesed, all the Torah, all the things. I could have done so much. And meanwhile, I got this big number in my bank account, but it's got a little minus before it. There's a big problem, right? I can't do stuff for you. The answer is that's not your mission. You're given the equipment you need for your mission, the pluses and the minuses. I was speaking this good chaver of ours here before this year about what the Chaim HaKadosh said in Rabbeinu Bechaya about Moshe Rabbeinu being kvad peh and kvad lashon, have a speech impediment. Right? You tell Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, well, at least you can talk. What does that mean? It means that, and the Or Chaim points out, when Moshe Rabbeinu put a very logical case to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm sorry, I'm really not the guy to go to Paro because, listen to me, I can't speak. And Hashem says, who made people deaf or hearing, seeing or not seeing, etc. The Or Chaim said what's missing in that dialogue. Hashem saying, I'm going to fix it for you, don't worry, you're going to go, you're going to bring the house down. He didn't say that. So Rabbeinu Bechaya adds in why he thinks Moshe Rabbeinu needed that. He said Moshe Rabbeinu had to present the words of Hashem to Paro, to Am Yisrael, and if he was a charismatic, fabulous orator, people would say, all right, this guy, he can sell anything. So they bought into him, he convinced them. It doesn't mean that what he says is the truth. The fact that he didn't speak so well, but his words changed everything, show the power of what he was saying and what he was a channel of, and helped him give it over in a very different way. He knew he was not going to be, right, the smashing performance that it was going to get everybody on the edge of their seat from that. But he knew he had the words of Hashem. And that's what's powerful, which is there. Okay, so this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us. Now, does that mean that we're supposed to be passive and say, okay, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me this limitation, so I guess he knows what he's doing? No. The fact that we daven for parnasa and for health and for all these different things, and that as part of our bitachon we do ishtadlus, to do what we can to get ourselves into the state that we can do the maximum that we can within our ability. So that is part of what he wanted, to bring us close to him and to bring him into this world. Right? Chazal say, Yitzur Shalom Mischareshov B'chol Yom. The Yetzer Hara renews itself every day. Right? It's like if you imagine just fighting this amazing ninja, that as soon as you knock him down, he gets up and he has new tricks and new tools, and you can't seem to win. Ilmale HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ozro, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't help you, you would never win. Say, with all due respect, God, so why not tune him down a little bit and let me win? So the answer is that you were supposed to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through that struggle. Those things, when you're turning to Hashem and saying, I know what my mission is, I need help. I need help. Whether in physical things, in spiritual things, in wisdom, and all those things. So then you were with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you brought him into that part of the world with whatever struggle you're doing. And that's the purpose of the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted dira b'tachtonim. He wanted a dwelling place here in this world. He wanted us to bring him into this world, and only through Am Yisrael and what they're doing does that happen. Now some people, right, they start to get a little down about that, right? Because you like to feel, hey, I worked hard, I achieved, I've got my spirituality, right? I've got all these things. And here you're telling me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if he wasn't helping you, you just, you'd be the worst of the worst. Right? Just realize that. So, I tried for my health. The doctor told me I got to go to this gym and try to do some things. There are two populations there. Old guys like me trying to stay alive, and these young guys that are like always taking pictures of their stomach and stuff, and and doing all these things. And I noticed, like, when these guys are doing their heavy stuff, so one person will ask the other one to spot for him. Okay, that means like you're lying on a bench and you're about to pick up this heavy thing, and just in case you drop it, you don't want to crush your rib cage. So there's a guy standing behind you, right there, kind of with his hands ready to help out. Now, toward the end of the set, let's say the person wants to push it up 10 times. There's a nusach that this guy says, right? The guy's starting to shake a bit, and he has his hands there. He says, it's all you, it's all you, it's all you. And I was trying to think, what is the meaning of that nusach, right? So, and I realized, right, the guy did 9. He wants to do 10. But if the guy behind him is really helping, that's not going to count, right? So he's just like touching the bar for safety. He's letting him know, it's all you. You can be proud of yourself. It's all you. Nobody helped you. In Judaism, that's never there. It's never all you, right? It's always anything which is there. Hashem's on the barbell. And that is supposed to be something we embrace instead of something that gets us down. Okay, so this is where we are, in Gashmius, in Ruchnius, and he says this is really the purpose of the Golus. Am Yisrael are supposed to be in Golus, and sometimes, right, Rav Chaim Friedlander brings a question that I think occurred to all of us if we were chutzpahdik toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu at some point. Right? You say the Jews were in Israel, they had a Beis HaMikdash, they had a Sanhedrin, they had Nevi'im, but they weren't behaving very nicely. So Hashem burns down the Beis HaMikdash, scatters everybody among the nations of the world. You think like, how's that going to help? Right? If we're bad in Israel, all that stuff, that's going to help? And the answer is that we have to realize, right, that if we abandon our mission, so then we don't really have anything. We don't really have that. We have to realize that our identity and our ability to function as a nation only comes from that. And only then can we come back to Eretz Yisrael. Because if we're in Eretz Yisrael thinking it's all me, so then we're not part of that and we're not fulfilling it. So it's a powerful answer, and I think that enables a person to thank Hashem, right? Even for those things that you have, even though you would want more, even though you see it's a limitation, but you realize that you were designed for a certain part of the mission. And there are many aspects of your life, things you went through, things you're going through, things that you wouldn't have wanted to have necessarily, right? But those are all part of making you who you're supposed to be. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu got thrown in the river, was brought up in Paro's house, that's a very strange way for a Jewish boy to grow up. But that was clearly a key part of him becoming Moshe Rabbeinu and everything he was supposed to do. So the bottom line here, again, wanting to emphasize in terms of the Ruchnius, is that nobody should ever be a snob. Right? No Jew that sees another Jew that's not keeping X, Y, or Z, or the whole ABC till X, Y, Z of Judaism, should be looking down on them and saying, you should have been like me, right? I did what I worked hard. I got this. You gave in to the Yetzias Hara, right? You sold out. You're a traitor. No. You would be the same thing right now. For whatever reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to give you the insight, the strength, the lessons, the people you met who inspired you instead of killing your inspiration. And that's all a gift. Not a gift as a present for you to play with. That's equipment for your mission. And that's only there for you to use, not there to lord over other people. That's how the great people of Am Yisrael recognized the talents that they had. And they point out, Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal, he was a very humble person. I actually heard from a guy, he said it was his brother-in-law. I've heard the story around a bit, that he said his father-in-law was driving by Rav Moshe's yeshiva in the Lower East Side of New York, MTJ, where his brother-in-law learned, and his brother-in-law was named Moshe. So his father honked the horn, rolled down the road, he said, "Hey Moshe!" And Rav Moshe Feinstein came hustling over to the car, he says, "Can I help you?" And he was mortified. No, not that Moshe, right? This Moshe, right? So he had that. On the other hand, they say that when he was deciding whether to get an operation to have a pacemaker put in, he was debating, wondering if having that physical infirmity would disqualify him from being on the Sanhedrin. If Mashiach came, it was clear to him he would be sitting on the Sanhedrin, right? How can you be one and the other? Both, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me abilities, gave me gifts, which are there for my part of the mission. I try to do them, but I'm just Moshe with a lot of talents that were given that I'm supposed to use. If I don't use them, so I'm Moshe without them. Amar Rabbi Yossi, it says in the Gemara that Rabbi Yossi, speaking about the day of Matan Torah, he said, Ilav hayoma, if it wasn't for that day, the day of Matan Torah, kama Yossi ika b'shuka. How many Yossis are there in the marketplace? Taking it superficially, that seems almost like this kind of arrogant statement. He says, yeah, man, if it wasn't for Torah, if I didn't get to become this great Talmud Chacham, I just would have been another Joe Schmo, right, out there in the thing. And now I'm supreme. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, only because of Matan Torah, where we were given a mission, the Maharal describes it that way. He describes Matan Torah as, he says that the three holidays, Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot, correspond to the three stages of interaction between a shliach and a mashaleach, a messenger and the one who sends him on his mission. Pesach, you choose the messenger. Shavuos, Matan Torah, you inform him of the content of his mission. Sukkot, which is our most futuristic of holidays, is the reporting back and saying, we fulfilled our mission. So that's what he says. Ilav hayom, if it wasn't Shavuos, if it wasn't for the fact that I was given a mission, so then how many Yossis are in the Shuk? He wasn't just talking about, I'm a special Yossi and the rest of them are nobody Yossis. Everyone is a unique Yossi because of Matan Torah. The one who knows more, like Rabbi Yossi, and the one who knows less. But Matan Torah means that all of them have a part to play in that mission. If not, they wouldn't be there. That's the way we're supposed to, and we're meant to look at these things. It's very important, and it's very important to realize. Recently I was talking to someone who just had this thing in their head that if they can't do everything, so then, just doing a little something isn't worth it, right? And they said, and I can't do everything, so why do anything? Your limitations are the limitations that are there. And you work with them, you do them, but right now, everything you do has meaning. Every single thing you do has meaning, helps fulfill the mission, and focus on that, and not what was before, not what was after. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said, I think I heard it quoted from earlier sources as well. When a person is sitting down to learn, a lot of times you can just get depressed by looking at the walls, like of this base medrash, you look at all the Sfarim, right? You're on one page, some sefer, you say, this is a tiny drop in the ocean. When am I ever going to learn that stuff? What's the point, right? And there's so many people that already know this and know this way better than me. So what's the point? He said, what you should do when you learn is you have to feel, I'm the only Jew in the world. Today is the only day in history. And this page I'm learning now is the only page in the entire Torah. Because that's your mission right now. And that's who and where it is. And the other people are living that reality as well. It helps sometime, right, which is there. So hopefully, like I say, this is a very powerful v'yadatim. The constant knowledge of that hamotzi is something that reminds us of how to deal with what we don't have, with what we do have, and to remember who we are and what our true identity is as these shlichim of Hashem. Have a wonderful week, folks. A wonderful Shabbos. Welcome to you.